Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai. Jai Shri Rup Sanatan Shri Bhakti Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattadasa Raghunath Sad Goswami Prabhu's ki jai. Jai Swarab Damodar Rai Ramananda Gauda Parasadi ki jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Sika Hosi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Gamsamuna ki jai. Brihad Mridanga ki jai. Sankirtan Yagya ki jai. Nam Bhajan ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Sachinandana Gaura Hari ki jai. Shri Radha Gopinath Ju ki jai. Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Om Aginaatimirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Prabhajantam Anapetyam Apetya Krityam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tammayatayo Tarabo Benedustam Sarvabhutam Manatoshmi Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayatudiraye Angashyamala Chaturbi Abhito Mandi Kritendi Varam Jatyam Jagutam Rochisam Vihatam Patam Parasya Shriyam Vrindaranyam Vilasinam Hridila Sattamodya Amodaram Radhaskandani Mochvala Bhujam Dayama Damodaram. I first of all offer millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Astotarasara Shishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all our Rupanuga Guru Varga, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, headed by Pujapad Sajan Maharaj, Dandavat Pranams. So, for the last couple of years, I've been giving series of classes of the working through this Bhagavatam, and we discussed an overview initially, and then we discussed the first verse, and then we discussed the first and second cantos, and last time, a few months ago, we discussed the third canto, but it was very much short in time, and we just went very quickly through this Kapila-Devahuti Samvada. And when I left, I was feeling very dissatisfied because it's such a thick topic. Actually, we could have a class on one verse for one day, every day, of this Samvada. It's very, very powerful and special. It's actually the first time in the Bhagavatam, just to recap for a moment, what I'm trying to present is a thread going through the Bhagavatam. It's not just at random points. I'm trying to, in a sense, eventually capture the Bhagavatam in the palm of our hands, just like when we read the commentaries of Jiva Goswami or Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. They have it right in their hand. They can go from the 10th to the 7th to the 8th to the 9th, just in one moment. They have the whole. So the Bhagavatam is very large, 12 cantos, 18,000 verses.
String a garland.
Huh?
Stringing a garland.
Yes. So, but nevertheless, with the great help of the explanations of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he's encouraged a methodology of how to study it, how to break down each canto, where it's moving to, what is the conclusion within each canto, and what is the sort of rhythm of the Bhagavatam. So this is basically what I'm doing here now. It's not that I'm necessarily going to go extensively thick into Kapila-Deva, although we will go quite significantly into his teachings. But at the same time, I'm trying to present an opportunity to study the Bhagavatam. If we just take it out in different sections, it doesn't have quite the same potency as when we see it on this thread. So from the first verse, for example, I'll just recap very briefly. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives 5 explanations of the Satyam Parama Dhimahi. Satyam means topmost. Parama, or Satyam means truth and eternal. Parama is topmost. Yes. Satyam Parama Dhimahi. What will I meditate on? What is my meditation in the Bhagavatam? So his first premise is the Brahman realization of the unmanifest nature of the Lord, which actually is what most people think about. If we take reference to hundreds of thousands of people who study this Bhagavatam, this is actually what we're in a bit of a bubble here that Prabhupada created for us, and we think the Bhagavatam is only about bhakti. It is only about bhakti, but others will take other interpretations from it. So the Brahman was his first explanation, and then higher than the Brahman, the personal aspect of Lakshmi Narayan, this worship of Narayan form. So then we have Purush, then we have the personality. And then higher than this is Madhurya, the essence of sweetness. He jumps a whole track and goes straight to Madhurya. And then higher than Madhurya is Radha and Krishna themselves. Radha and Krishna themselves too. This is the conclusion of our meditation, is on Radha and Krishna. And then he goes higher than this. He says, no, actually the highest conception is Bhakti Devi herself. Bhakti Devi herself, that devotion to Radha and Krishna. This is the highest conception for the jiva. This is our part of the equation, our worship towards Radha and Krishna. It's this point of worship, Bhakti Dev, devotion. So Bhakti Dev, so this is the Bhakti Sar, this is the thread throughout the Bhagavatam. And it comes in many different forms, as we see. There are, just as our minds are so, they can jump all over the place. The mind is, from our perspective, very large. We can just go all over the place. So similarly, oscillating, yeah. So similarly, the Bhagavatam is also caters for that. It addresses every aspect that we experience in creation. So then we went through the first 19 chapters of the first canto, and we watched the rhythm go through. And then Shukadeva Goswami himself appears in the 19th chapter, at the very end of the first canto. So it's as if it hasn't really gotten rolling yet, in a sense, because Shukadeva Goswami hasn't even appeared. So there's a whole 18 chapters of prelude about the history. And it's immediately emphasizing the personality of Krishna. Krishna entering Hastinapur, or Krishna leaving Hastinapur rather, him entering Dwarka, his relatives, the Pandavas, etc., all these personalities. Then Ashwatthama is there very early on. So this is like the color. It's setting through the teachings or the pastimes in the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is tremendously useful and helpful in understanding the Bhagavatam. If you've read the Mahabharata, once or twice, etc., it's very, very helpful. All the names, will be, familiar, and it won't be, because we want to make the Bhagavatam accessible. This is why I'm speaking these series, to try to give everyone, help us to entrance into this Bhagavatam, to give some inspiration.
Yesterday I read that Narada, Sukada, others, rishis, they put on a scale all the Puranas and Itihasas and Vedic Shastras, Shrutis, and then they put the Mahabharata on the other side, and it was the Mahabharata was...
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Nice. You understood what he said? That they put all the Puranas, Itihasas, etc. on one side of the scale, and then they just put the Mahabharata on the other, and it tipped over. So this Mahabharata is very, very helpful in study. It'll give an idea of the personal nature. Everything we're trying to purify, like Prabhupada's commentaries throughout, are purifying this impersonal conception. And I've described a number of times how we're coming from an impersonal place. This Tatashta region where we have manifested from, within the body of Mahavishnu, we were in an impersonal state of consciousness. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati calls it Shantaras. So it's very easy for us just to go back to that place, because we've been there before. It's an eternal place. We didn't want to go to Krishna, we didn't want to come here. So that impersonal impression is deep within us. So just in a moment we can go back to there. So Prabhupada, in his wisdom, understood this so clearly. So many of his commentaries are about this purification of this impersonal. And of course, Mayavad, initially. These two conceptions is what Prabhupada is smashing. Yes, he's smashing this. So, at the end of the first canto, Shukadeva Goswami appears. I'm trying to give the picture. We want to get a picture. I want a picture. I can understand it if I have a picture. So at the end of the first canto, 19th chapter, Shukadeva appears. And at the end of the second canto, then Shukadeva Goswami is describing what's about to be presented. It's not until the 10th verse, Jai, Dandavas, Haribol. It's not until the last verse, or the first verse of the 10th chapter in the second canto. There are 10 chapters in the second canto. It's a small canto. But Shukadeva Goswami gives this verse. Atras, what is it? Atrasago Vishagas Cha. Stanam Poshanam Utaya. Mantavya Ishanan Kata. Niroda Mukti Ashraya. This verse is saying the 10 topics that are about to be discussed in the whole Bhagavatam. So again, we're able to get a handle on something. We've had the prelude, we've had the build-up, we've had Shukadeva Goswami making his appearance, and we've even had the Chatushloki, which is in the second canto. Those essential 4 verses that Brahma spoke to Narad. So we've had all that, and then Shukadeva Goswami is giving this description of the 10 subject matters. This Sargo means the cosmic creation, and then Vishargo, the local creation by Lord Brahma, and then Sthanam, how it's all resting on Krishna's energy, and then Poshanam, how Krishna reciprocates with his devotees, and then Utaya, or Uti. This is very beautiful. This is like the creative impetus in man, and it's usually demonic. And this is actually described in the 7th canto of Hiranyakashipu, in his desire to create his, or demonstrate his control. So this is Utaya, and then the Manvantaras, and then Katha about Krishna, and then that's the 7th topic, and then the 8th is Nirbodha, which means the winding up of all this cosmic manifestation. Because Nirodha, yeah, you explain how it's created, and then you can also explain how it's again coming back into the body of Mahavishnu. It's incredible. I mean, this knowledge is without limit. Actually, recently I've been trying to get some sort of summary of this Kapila-Devahuti Samvada, and every time I think I've got a summary, then something else comes up, and all of a sudden it's like opened again. It's just constantly expanding, this Bhagavatam. So it's the elixir of the devotee's life. Actually, daily, more than daily, we should drink this divine beverage. So then after Nirodha, then is mukti itself, liberation from the material energy. And finally, ashraya, that everything is resting on Sri Krishna. This is the final conclusion of the Bhagavatam. So these 10 principles are addressed throughout the 9, 10, and 11, 12 cantos. Through all these cantos. So already we've got a roadmap at the end of the second canto, very clearly. So I described all this previously. So now we're rolling ahead into the third canto. And then in the third canto, it's a conversation between Vidura and Maitreya Rishi. And I told the whole history of Maitreya and Vidura last time. And the beautiful pastime of Varaha suddenly drops right in the middle of this third canto, because Maitreya is sensing Vidura's desire to hear directly about the Supreme Lord. So there's this beautiful pastime of Varaha. This is the first time Krishna himself is directly appearing in the Bhagavatam as Varaha. But what does he say? He doesn't say very much. He just dives into that Garbhodak ocean and rescues Mother Earth. And he laughs at the demigod's fear of his battle with Hiranyaksha. But he doesn't give any instructions. It's just a demonstration of his amazing personality and ability to transform into this hog personality. So beautiful though. Golden color or dark color. So this is the first time he appears. Now the second time he appears in the whole Bhagavatam is as Kapila-Dev at the end of this third canto. So now we've got a sequence already coming through. The first canto is pretty much the Mahabharata pastimes of Parikshit Maharaj establishing Krishna's identity. The second is the entrance of Shukadev Goswami, and he's giving very profound explanations and instructions straight off. He's saying, why not be detached from this material world? Aren't there flat grounds where you can sleep on? Can't you use your arm as a pillow? Can't you use your hands to eat your food? Can't you wear the bark of trees? Straight away, he's showing his callousness to the material energy. This is Shukadev Goswami in the second canto. And then he's building to the Chatushloki. So try and collect this thread and hold on to it. And then at the end of that second canto, he's enumerating what are the 10 subject matters. So now we get into the 10 subject matters in the third canto. So then we hear about the cosmic manifestation, this Sargo and Vishargo. We hear both of these. And now we're coming to this, the avatars, because these 10 subject matters, just to make it more complicated, are not in sequence always. Because we have to accept the mood or bhav of the speaker. The bhav of the speaker, bhav cannot be directed mechanically. It will just erupt out of the heart. And as he feels spontaneously inspired to speak on different topics, he will do that. It's not like he's not trying to make it chronological. But for us, students, we want to pick something thread from it. So that thread is bhakti sar, all the way through. So I was telling actually Pushpadanta Prabhu just before that after reading all of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentaries about the explanations of these subject matters in a very significant way, then coming back to relish Srila Prabhupada's embrace of his commentaries, because his commentaries are not of the same analytical mood at all. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was an empowered personality. All he saw was Bhakti Devi. Every single verse, he only relates to Bhakti. Even if it's Astanga Yoga, even if it's Jnana Yoga, even if it's Karma Yoga, he still will only talk about Bhakti. Because when we had this Bhagavatam landed in the West, we didn't even know what Gyan was. We didn't even know what Karma was. We didn't know all these things. We only knew one thing, that was Bhakti Devi. Because that's all he gave us. He didn't try and mix it around. But when we go back and look at Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's very scholarly presentation that was originally in Sanskrit, then he breaks it all up and analyzes it. So now, with a little bit of understanding and knowledge, most of us are older devotees here, so hearing these topics for so many years, we start to understand what is Gyan Bhakti, what is yoga, what is Astanga yoga, we start to relate to these differences in bhakti, what is Mishra, what is mixed bhakti, etc. So this is what is going to be related in this Kapila Samvada. So now one appreciation we should have at this point of Kapila Dev and Devahuti is, who is Devahuti? Who can say who her father was? No, that's her husband.
Father.
Manu. What's the name of Manu? Which Manu? Swayambhuva Manu. Yes. Very good. Now, where is Swayambhuva Manu in the line of Manus? There are 14 Manus in a day. He's the first one. And where are we now? 7. That means 2 billion years ago, Devahuti asked these questions to Kapila Dev. 2 billion years ago. Because there are 4,320,000,000 years in a day of Lord Brahma. Not including his night, just the day. Look, here's the map.
Is that Earth time or heaven?
Earth time. This is the map. This is a day, the yellow, of Lord Brahma. It's divided into 14 Manus. So this first Manu, Swayambhuva, and this whole day is 4,320,000,000 years. The whole day and night is 8,640,000,000 years. That's the day and the night. So it was approximately 2 billion years ago that this Samvad took place. But how fresh is it? You know, I only realized this like a few days ago. I was always thinking, oh, this happened in Satya Yuga. Just the last little Satya Yuga, just a little bit back, you know, a few thousand years back. But actually it happened billions of years ago, 2 billion years ago. But how pertinent is it and fresh? This is the efficacy of transcendental knowledge. It is eternal. It is applicable to the eternal soul. It is never something that is just according to time, place, and circumstances. It is this thread of eternality that we're becoming linked with. Krishna, when he left this world, he left 2 things. He left Nam and he left the Bhagavatam. These 2 aspects are non-different to Krishna, completely non-different. If we take shelter of Nam and this Bhagavat, how can our lives not be successful? Krishna Swadharma Pajite Dharmajanadibisaha Kalana Sotrishamishah Purana Kodunodita. This Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun, has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna for his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Men who have lost their vision due to the dense fog of this age shall get light from this Bhagavat Purana. Even though it was spoken, a conversation is being related that was spoken 2 billion years ago. So this just puts it in its context. It puts it in its wealth, its richness. It's so profound, this Bhagavatam. Yes. Yes, within the Bhagavatam. Within the name and the Bhagavatam. He's saying Nam, Guna, and Rupa are all within the Bhagavatam. So these 3 are there, present. So now, today I was thinking to present something of an overview, again, before I go into each chapter, so we can get a thread separately from each chapter. I want to go through each chapter. I have it all here. I don't know whether we're going to have time to do it. But at least, if some of you aren't going to be here for so long, you can have something of a taste of the overview. There are 9 chapters that Kapila-Dev will speak to his mother. So you all remember the pastime of Kardama Muni. He performed austerities, and in order to please his father, Lord Brahma, he's the son of Lord Brahma, Kardama Muni, he wanted to populate the planet. This is what his father had asked him to do. So he wanted a wife to do that. So then Krishna manifested at the conclusion of his austerities and meditation and told him, all right, I will supply you with the daughter of Swayambhuva Manu, and Satarupa is the mother. I will supply you with this very highly qualified girl, and she will become your wife, and she will fulfill all of your desires to satisfy your father, Lord Brahma. So then Devahuti is brought to his ashram, and then for many years Kardama Muni is still performing his austerities, and because of Devahuti's remarkable qualification, she neglects her body entirely just to please her husband. All her hair becomes matted, she becomes very skinny and so on, for many, many years, pleasing her husband. And then her husband one day just says, oh, well, now I'm going to go and renounce after all this. And then Devahuti says, oh, but you said you would give me a son before I leave. So then Kardama Muni, he manifests from his yogic power this enormous mansion, flying mansion, bedecked with all kinds of rooms and pigeons and maidservants and etc., lakes, gardens, trees, everything. I mean, Kardama Muni himself is astonished with this manifestation. And then they go for 100 years. They just fly around enjoying all the heavenly gardens, etc. And then they come back to their ashram, and that time Kardama Muni expands himself into 9 different forms to enjoy with Devahuti. And it's described how the woman's lust is 9 times more than the man's in this section of the Bhagavatam. So he expands himself in 9 forms, and he has 9 daughters, all in one shot. And they all grow up very quickly, because this is in Satya Yuga also, even though it's billions of years ago, it's still in Satya Yuga, so there's no pain of birth and so on. And then finally, again, Kardama is going to leave, and then again, Devahuti requests him for a son, and then this ray coming from Vishnu himself, Krishna himself, manifests in the heart of Kardama Muni, and then it's transferred through his semen into the womb of Devahuti. And then Kapila-Dev is born. This was in the 24th chapter of this 3rd canto. Now we've come to the 25th chapter, where Kapila-Dev is sitting leisurely with his mother, and his mother requests Kapila-Dev to please take her out of this suffering condition. She's actually saying that she's disgusted with the amount of time that she has wasted just in sensual engagement, flying around in this aerial mansion. And she's totally fried with everything. She just wants to find a way to the treasure of her heart. She wants to find that place of purity where she is understanding what is the material nature and what is spirituality. She wants to know the difference between these two, and she wants to perform devotion. This is her request. We'll go into that in detail in a minute, but I just want to briefly make an overview of these chapters so we can start to sort of see how they're going to unfold. So the first time that Devahuti answers his mother, he gives her the whole package of actually Shuddha Bhakti. Immediately he gives her entirely what is pure Bhakti. And he talks about the necessity to take association, sadhu-sanga, in 4 verses, very strongly. And this is compatible to the unfoldment of Bhakti itself. sadhu-sanga. So this is in the 25th chapter. And then Devahuti, she's asking questions. And then in the 26th chapter, which is quite complex, then Gyan Yoga is described now. But Gyan Yoga, to be successful, must take the shelter of Bhakti also. So Gyan is described with devotion. And Kapila is describing the devotion to himself. So this is the second chapter that he's speaking. Actually, there's 5 chapters that he's going to speak about different aspects of devotional service. There is Gyan Mishra Bhakti. There is Karma Mishra Bhakti. There are the Gyanis, and there are the Gyani Bhaktas, as I spoke a little bit yesterday. A Gyani is someone who takes shelter of knowledge for the purpose of achieving liberation from this material world. He wants liberation, that's his goal. Either Swaga or in the Brahmajyoti. This is the object of a Gyani. It's not a Gyani Bhakta. A Gyani Bhakta is different. A Gyani Bhakta sees the opulences within Krishna. So he has knowledge of Krishna's opulences. So a Gyani Bhakta and a Gyani are different. So Kapila Dev in 5 chapters is describing these different types of bhakti. And then in 3 chapters, he's describing the suffering that we endure if we don't follow this path of bhakti. He's describing those activities that are adverse to Bhakti Devi. So he's giving the whole picture. If you don't perform this bhakti yoga, your life is going to be completely miserable. Not only this life, but all future births also. He's making it a very real statement. You can't avoid bhakti, ultimately. So there's 3 chapters. One is about the birth of the jiva also within the womb, and its growth, etc., and the suffering condition that it endures in the mother's womb, the jiva. And then finally, in the 32nd chapter, he's talking about the result of prescribed activities. If somebody wants to worship the demigods, there's a certain remuneration that the demigods will reciprocate with. And this is unfortunate in a sense because you're missing bhakti. You're doing things for a fruitive result. Sakam, karma yoga. So all these different types of bhakti are there. Now we can just appreciate for a moment, as I said, that this was spoken 2 billion years ago. So in the time frame of 2 billion years, how many Gyani Bhaktas were there? How many Gyani Yogis were there? How many Sakam Karma Yogis were there? There were all these different varieties of people with these different desires. Some wanted salvation, some wanted liberation, some wanted Swagaloka, some wanted Paramatma realization, some wanted all mystic cities. All these different desires are there within this conversation. So, but Prabhupada, in his presentation, gives us the impression that, oh, it's only spoken for the bhaktas. I mean, this was the impression I always had, that it's only giving that inspiration for Shuddha Bhakti. But actually, on a closer analysis, it's describing so many other types of bhakti. So now, coming to the subject matter of this 25th. So Kapila, this Samvad begins from the 25th chapter and goes through till the 33rd chapter. In the 33rd chapter, that's just a pastime of Kapila Dev leaving his ashram forever, and his mother fully taking shelter of the instructions that she's given him, and she comes to the successful consummation of her practice in this 33rd chapter. She tastes what is Shuddha Bhakti. So this is the context for this these chapters. So now in this 25th chapter, we come back to the different personalities. So it starts off with Sonaka Rishi, again inquiring from Sutta Goswami. Actually, just a couple of days ago, I had the fortune to go to Naimisharanya, and this is where this very conversation was spoken originally. And there's a Chakratirtha in the center, and it's described that for 15 kilometers radius, there lived 88,000 rishis for 1,000 years. And many of those rishis left their bodies, and they took the form of trees so they could still reside in that place. And when you go there, it's filled with these huge, huge banyan trees all over the place. And there's the Gomati River. It's a very incredibly sacred place. But this is where this very conversation took place. So then Sutta Goswami begins to speak. So this is the background of the Bhagavatam. All these personalities we have to become very familiar with. So we have friendships with these personalities. We know who they are. We feel comfortable with them. So I've described them previously. And I've recorded it actually, so you can go back and you can listen to those descriptions of those personalities. But then again, Maitreya Rishi, he starts to describe Kapila Dev's interaction with his mother. And then Kapila Dev himself begins to speak. And first of all, Devahuti, she is asking this question. She's saying that she's disgusted with material life, and she's agitated by the temporary manifest senses of the material body. So Bhakti Devi is described as being the instrument for purifying our attachment to this world. And that comes in two forms. There is the negative aspect, and there is the Swarup Lakshan, the positive aspect. So the negative aspect is just its temporary nature, hell, fire, and brimstone, so to speak. It's all the negative aspects of life, how you can't, find satisfaction in a material body that ultimately breaks down and causes so much pain, etc. So all of those aspects are one side or one type of detachment, but the principle is the attachment to Krishna. This has to be going simultaneously. So simultaneously, as I'm releasing myself from my attachments to this world, and if we don't do it ourselves, Krishna will do it for us if we're devotees. He'll gradually take away, very kindly, eventually he'll take away our lives. He'll take away this material body. So that's what's going to happen. One way or another, we're going to have to develop this detachment. And if we don't develop the detachment, unfortunately, we'll have to come back and do the cycle again and again and again. And very unfortunately, if we do develop some material attachment, then certainly, of course, we'll have to come back again. So this detachment is going to take place. But what is not 100% assured is that the attachment is going to manifest. This will come principally through the mercy of Sri Guru. Sri Guru, by his presence, by his understanding, by his realization, by his personality, by his example, is going to show us the sweetness of attachment to Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan Dham. So we are not just going for attachment to Lord Narayan or Vaikuntha. We are going attachment to Goloka Vrindavan. We're going to Braj Dham. This is even more exclusive to how to find this sweetness, this relish, this attachment. So this is our focus of bhakti. And this is impregnated within our hearts through the Shakti of Sri Guru. Sri Guru is completely giving us that roadmap. And our Gurudev has given so many hundreds and thousands of explanations on what is Shuddha Bhakti. Constantly, practically every single festival I ever attended, what is pure bhakti? Stand up, tell me, Anya Vilasita Sunyam, you tell me. And he would make people say it again and again and again and again. Make this impression of what is pure bhakti. Completely freedom from all material desires. It's not covered by gyan, It's not covered by karma. It's not covered by fear, speculation. This is the negative aspect. And what is the positive aspect? That anukalyena Krishna anushilanam. It's following the intrinsic bhavs of those residents of Braj. It's following those moods. So this is what is pure bhakti. So we need to be very clear on what is our goal, what is Shuddha Bhakti. So right at the very beginning, Kapila Dev is saying in the first, in his first explanation, he says in something like 5 or 6 verses, he says very clearly what is pure bhakti. And then, simultaneously as explaining what is pure bhakti, then he also adds the most essential ingredient is sadhu-sanga. And then there's the very famous verse that Srila Gurudev would speak regularly, Satam prasangam mama vira samvido, bhavanti hritkana rasanaya kata, taj josarvasad apavargo vatmano, shraddha rati bhakti anukramishyati. That this comes in this 25th chapter that we're discussing. So Kapila Dev, he's explaining to his mother this importance of sadhu-sanga. And Srila Gurudev says this sadhu-sanga is what confirms our shraddha, our faith, essentially. Faith is the vital ingredient. If our faith is progressing each day, then naturally our bhakti is strong. Our progress is going to be assured. And Krishna will make so many special, exceptional arrangements to prove to us the vericacy, the absolute reality of these words. More and more in our lives, we want to depend on Krishna. If you're quite materially competent, it's rather something of a disadvantage. I find this in my life. I've always felt I can navigate myself around, no problem. I can do what I have to do. I've tried not to depend so much on others. But actually it's somewhat of a disadvantage because it slows us down depending fully on Krishna. Because Krishna is the one who's going to give the results or the benefits of any of our practice whatsoever. So this dependence on Krishna needs to be encouraged and sure, and this comes through our shraddha. Now there is lokik shraddha and paramattik shraddha. This paramattik shraddha is that transcendental faith, that absolute rock solid faith. It can't be shifted. That's when the faith has crossed over a line, when we know irrevocably that yes, Krishna is that Supreme Lord. Yes, I am spirit soul. Yes, this is a material temporary body. When that shraddha is this pitch, that is called paramattik shraddha. That is the highest place. So I can remember hearing Gurudev speaking about this in Mathura many years ago. And when I first heard his explanation of that, it became very exciting to actually want to achieve that place of absolute rock-solid shraddha, that most profound shraddha.
Gurudev says that paramattik shraddha comes from the heart of the pure Vaishnava Sadguru.
Into the heart of the sadhak. Yes. So everything is about Guru Padashraya. Everything is about our service to Guru. This path of bhakti cannot proceed without Guru. It cannot be performed just by speculation at all. Which shows the sadhak has to put his dependence outside of his own very localized situation. He has to depend on Guru. Even today, of course, we are crying for the kripa, for the mercy of Guru. And Guru's mercy can come with such force at any moment if he sees our continued sincerity to this path. This sincerity is an essential quality to be constantly cultivating. And Sri Nam will cultivate this. the practice of Sri Nam will excite within us these spiritual desires to take more careful shelter of Guru. And Guru will be indicating to us constantly along the path what is correct and what is not correct. This is bhakti. If we have Sadguru, and Sadguru is not a cheap thing. Sadguru is a great treasure to have attained. And if we have attained that in this life, then our service for the rest of our life is to continue to serve him. It's not that, oh, now I must find another guru quickly. I must run here, run there, everywhere. Guru has given everything. And every single day, I can perform my Guru Seva more significantly. If another Sadguru comes, that is absolutely the icing on the cake. That's completely beautiful. But we already have so much. Don't disregard the jewels that we already have being placed in our hearts. And as much as possible, we want to seek higher association whenever the opportunity arises, but not some sort of mad, desperate, I haven't got anything, I've got to run to this person, I've got to run here, go everywhere around, and I'm not actually even taking the time and trouble to examine what has Gurudev already given me, what is within the treasure of my heart already. For 20 odd years, we've been impressed with these truths. Is all that just, for nothing? How long does it take you to unwrap all of those things? It takes time. We need to examine, actually, the immensity of his jewels, because our Guru in particular was not just an ordinary Guru. He gave us such an abundance of wealth. In the topics that we're discussing now, what is bhakti? And what we will discuss tomorrow and the next day, what is Gyan Mishra Bhakti? What is just Gyan? What is Vairagya? What is the nature of these different aspects of bhakti?
Gurudev told me after 25 years of practicing, you may know this much. So digest,
And as much as possible, don't misunderstand me, as much as possible, we take association, wherever possible, of higher souls who can nourish us, nourish that creeper. But our essential creeper is already sprouted, and he's given that. And if we are constantly referencing his moods and his instructions and his teachings, then he will be very pleased. I know it as a fact. If we start reading so many other books and from other people, etc., it doesn't have the same impact. Gurudev smiles when we're reading his teachings and instructions, and he will come directly and give us the mercy that we need. It's not that this identity as a shishya of our Guru should never be minimized with any other personalities. It shouldn't be obscured. We have that gem already.
At the same time, the current of bhakti is flowing.
Yes.
And that mood of Gurudev may manifest in someone else to help you nourish your relationship with Guru.
Yes. But the point of never forgetting Guru
Exactly.
must not be minimized, because I know some souls, when Guru leaves, they find someone else who's very empowered, very powerful, very potent, and then they begin to follow that person's moods and ideas at the expense of their own original Guru's moods and ideas.
If those moods are
not compatible. Yeah.
Then
So we have to be cautious with this. It's not so easy. It is easy and it's not easy simultaneously. It's easy if we just stay on the straight and narrow. The straight and narrow is to take shelter of Nam and Bhagavatam. If we stay in this place, then all success must manifest. So now in this particular chapter 25, again Devahuti, she interrupts Kapila and she asks more questions in a very much a mood of submissiveness. And she says, after Kapila Dev has described what is Shuddha Bhakti and the necessity for association. Then she asks, but I'm just a simple woman. How can I understand or practice these topics that you're describing? Please make it so simple that I will be able to practice this. And she says in such a sweet, humble mood of submission that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada describes. This is the clinching connection of guru and disciple at this point, just like in Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. So now Devahuti, she's bearing her soul in front of her son and saying how bereft and stupid and fallen she is. This is the condition that all Shishyas want to retain. This place that I don't know anything. Because what happens, you said, you might know that much, but that much might be in comparison to others seemingly quite, grand. And if we start to become, proud of that, then of course we've lost that whole connection.
Like Manchamayi and Swarasaki.
Not really. No.
In the beginning it's like Manchamayi.
Yes.
Then it becomes like a chain. Instructions.
That's usually in relationship to the pastimes, though. That's not in relationship to... This is still very much in the Vaidhi platform. This is not rolled over into, spontaneous attraction. Kapila-Dev does mention 1 or 2 times, actually, the aspect of Raganuga within here. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it's almost like he's got a microscope. And any time at all, there's a scent of Raganuga, he will proclaim it very loudly. Oh, this verse is relating to Rag Marg. Because this spontaneous attraction to Krishna is the place which is most strong and solid in the heart. This Vaidhi Marg, this traditional following the rules and regulations, everything is actually done out of fear. We say our prayers out of fear that the sky, will drop on our heads if we don't pray. And we come to the Holy Dham because we're actually intimidated that if I don't do this, then I'm not going to get what I want also. So these are different sorts of desires. But the spontaneous attraction is something that will be gifted to us as a result of our practices, this Raganuga Bhakti. I'm saying a lot of things in a short space of time. I'm trying to come into this subject matter of this 25th chapter. So then, after Devahuti, she makes this request. Then immediately Kapila-Dev, his heart melts, and he just begins for 8 verses describing about the glories of sadhu-sanga. He begins to speak about the qualities of a sadhu, how a sadhu is always titikshka, he's always tolerant, completely tolerant. And the sadhu only sees the good in everybody that he meets. Actually, Gurudev used to talk about this. He used to say that that person who comes from the spiritual world only comes here just to see the good in everybody. They're not interested in anything negative is like our maya, so to speak. They only come to appreciate this fan, yes, the goodness within the jivas. So then he describes, for many verses, the glories of sadhu-sanga, the necessity of sadhu-sanga. But appreciate that we have already had sadhu-sanga. It's like, how much can you take and you're still not acting on it? And you're still just crying, oh, sadhu-sanga, but you're not acting on what's already been given? This is the point I'm making. We've already been given a lot of understanding of what is the nature of a sadhu. We have to dig around there and examine these jewels. So, he's explaining now bhakti mixed with jnana. He's starting to explain to control the senses. In order to control the senses, then we must have knowledge of the various senses, the 5 working senses, the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the 5 sense objects. He also describes the nature of pradhan and prakriti. This we will discuss tomorrow. This is the next chapter, but he touches a little bit on this. He starts to analyze more closely the nature, the working of consciousness. We have 5 working senses, like the hands, the feet, the genital, the anus. These are working senses. And then knowledge-acquiring senses, the eye, the nose, the tongue, the ear, the sense of touch. These are knowledge-acquiring senses. So this is Sankhya philosophy, Sankhya yoga. It's analytical. It's not directly Shuddha Bhakti. But I just read you one thing here that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, just to, I'll have my specs behind today. That's why I haven't been reading so much.
More like material knowledge?
Huh?
More like material knowledge.
No, not really. Does anyone have any spectacles? Okay, I'll try without it. He's saying directly that the paths of karma, gyan, and yoga cannot give results of swaga or liberation without bhakti. Even these paths you can't attain without bhakti. And then these other paths should be, we should become inquisitive to know about karma, gyan, and yoga. Can you read this last line?
Mine,
Oh.
pretty bad too.
What is this?
Just read the last line here.
About karma, gyan, and yoga. Now gyan will be discussed.
Yes. So he's describing that the devotee is inquisitive about these paths of karma and gyan and yoga. They are there. So it's behooving us to know something about them. So this is what will be discussed in the further chapters, because this is what this conversation is going to evolve to. So basically, these teachings in this particular chapter, this is entitled by Srila Prabhupada as devotional service. And in this first chapter, this is when Kapila-Dev is explaining the glories of devotional service in connection with sadhu-sanga. That it cannot be achieved or even begun without, as Sajjan Maharaj described, the infusion from the pure bhakta of that sangvit into the heart and the Hladini Shakti. So this infusion from Guru has to be there. So now, right at the very end of this chapter, there's a very beautiful verse, how in answer to a question that if I practice this path, will the devas, if I'm ignoring the devas, will they ever obstruct me? Will they make any problems for me? Actually, living in the West, we don't have the same sort of appreciation as we do living here of demigod worship. Where I live in Govardhan, for example, every single person around worships the devas to some degree every day. So you get that atmosphere of where everyone is worshipping all the devas. It's as if the devas are fully acknowledged. And it's the question that's been asked is, if I don't worship the devas, is problems going to come? And then Krishna says very beautifully, if any problem comes from any of the devas, I will relieve that deva of his position. And he gives one very beautiful verse here. He says, out of fear of me, the wind blows. Out of fear of me, the sun shines. Out of fear of me, Indra pours rain and fire burns. Out of fear of me, death flies away. So understand, everything is working under Krishna's control. So Krishna, Kapila-Dev began this chapter by describing the glories of Krishna first, and then he described the glories of Bhakti Devi herself. Then he described the glories of sadhu-sanga. And finally, he's answering this doubt about demigod worship. So this is approximately this chapter. It's not so easy just trying to make it into one whole summary because there are so many details in it. But if you've gotten something of the amount of details that are in here, and it gives some sort of inspiration to look more closely at this chapter, then my goal will be accomplished. That's what I want to try and inspire you to do, is to take entrance into this samvad, into these instructions of Kapila-Devi, because they're very, very sweet. Bhakti Devi herself is described as that personality who is very warm, charming, vigorous, always moving swiftly. This is the nature of Bhakti Devi herself. Always sweet, always filled with joy and happiness. This is what every heart is crying for, this joy and happiness, and it only exists in the treasure of Shuddha Bhakti. So in order to describe Shuddha Bhakti at length, then what is not Shuddha Bhakti also has to be described. Also the other side has to be described to heighten the glory of pure Bhakti. So tomorrow we'll discuss that chapter which opens that out. So today I've been through a little bit of a synopsis of what's about to come. It's quite complex, I find. It doesn't just fall off the page, this Kapila-Dev Samvad. But unless we take some time in our lives just to examine it, how will we fit it in with the rest of the current of the Bhagavatam? So I'm going to try in the next 4 days to explain something like 8 or 9 chapters in a abbreviated form, in their application to what is Shuddha Bhakti. We described a little bit yesterday, we have sadhan bhakti, bhav bhakti, and prema bhakti. We have to know what is the object of our sadhan. It's to achieve the stage of bhav. And what is the stage of bhav and what is the stage of prema? We have to understand that. Otherwise, how can we actually proceed? How can we go forward? We need to know what are the different aspects of bhakti. Because our hearts will be, Gurudev used to say sometimes, it seems like my heart and mind are on one side and Guru, Sadhu and Shastra are on the other. So I'm in this Tatashta region. This is my nature. And I'm oscillating between these two states of consciousness. So I'm trying to gradually, fully immerse myself in this higher stage. So I hope you've understood something from this brief description. And tomorrow we'll discuss the 26th chapter. Kapila-Devahuti Samvada ki jai. Natkoda Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gold Premanandi Hari Bol. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sahaj Padida Bhavishya. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.